Good evening to everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Commission members are appointed by the Select Board for the town, and our charter is to implement the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Milton Town bylaw governing the wetlands. As a matter of formality, we introduce ourselves, and the fastest way is if I go right across the top of the screen. Steve?
This is Steve
Would you
Ibis, a conservation agent.
All right, and I'm John Kiernan. Tom, you're next.
Tom Palmer, Conservation Commission.
Philip?
Philip Driscoll, Conservation Clerk.
Hans, you're still on mute.
Hans Fenlingen, Commission member.
Wendy and the cat?
Good evening, I'm Wendy Garko, I'm one of the commissioners.
And Arthur Doyle.
Arthur Doyle, Commission member.
Ingrid.
Ingrid Beatty, Commission member.
All right, perfect. We're ready to go. And I'm sorry, and just so the public knows, Todd Hamilton is on my telephone here trying to log in, but he's on the phone as I'm speaking. So we've got a relatively short agenda tonight. First is notice of intent 38 Bartons Lane. I know Ned, you're here, and I know you've got something to report from Alicia Galing from DEP.
Yes, thank you, John. A couple of things. One is we do not have a DEP file number. There was a glitch on our end, and we are rectifying that. So I know that the purpose of tonight, I think, was to close the hearing after the last site walk and to hopefully to issue an order of conditions. But we do not have a DEP file number. I did file an amended during the site walk regarding a dry well and drain pipe from the base of the patio area that I think was responsive. I don't know whether the commission can vote tonight subject to receiving a file number. If that's possible, that would be great. If not, we would move to continue to February 13th.
Well, we're not supposed to, and it would, we've certainly taken contingent or conditional votes in the past. But the problem is, until you have a DEP file number, the 21-day period doesn't start. So I talked to Alicia today from DEP, and she recommends, you can do whatever you want, but she recommended that we wait until you have the file number. So the real question, Ned, goes back to you, and that is that going to interrupt any construction plans?
No, I think as you saw on the sidewalk, John, there's work going on the dwelling itself. The work associated with the patio and anything within the 100-foot setback is not going to happen for a while. I think continuing to February is fine, and they will be ready to go, in the spring with any of the exterior work.
All right, fine.
So I think continuing to March is fine. To a February hearing is fine.
All right. What's the date in February, Steve?
Let's take a look. Hang on. February is 13th of February, the second Tuesday.
All right, that makes sense. But in the meantime, I think we can report that a subcommittee of the commission did go to do a site visit, and this is for the public's benefit and those that were not present. But Steve was there, and Tom Palmer was there, Arthur Doyle was there, and I was there, but we did not have a quorum. And Philip, I'm sorry, was there, but we did not have a quorum, so we couldn't take action on it. But we verified the wetland lines. It's on the plan. We made a couple of suggestions. Ned and the applicant did respond to that, and we've got that in our packet. That's the amended version. So I don't see any issues or problems, Ned. But to dot the I's and cross the T's as far as DEP is concerned, we should wait for the number.
Understood.
Any thoughts or questions on that?
I don't. As I said, I think we're comfortable with continuing to February 13th, and we'll resolve the issue with DEP and be ready to go.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I just want to bring to your attention that February 13th, there is an election, townwide election.
Oh,
All right, well, you know what? We won't be able to do this because we won't be able to do this tonight. But the reason being, we have to clear it with Sue Galvin, the town clerk. But we will pick another date. I'd suggest the following Tuesday. And I can't tell you that that's available for us. It should be because we're doing it by Zoom. But we do have to clear it with the town clerk. How does the next Tuesday sound? That would be the 20th?
That's fine with us.
All right, commission members, 20th, okay? We can,
It's,
Tom, I didn't hear you.
20th, good.
Okay,
Yep, it's good for me too, John.
Good.
that's
So,
good.
from a
Ingrid,
practical,
Hans, beautiful. All right, we will ask, well, Philip, can you see if you can address that tomorrow and ask for the 20th?
Absolutely, no problem.
And I assume it will not be an issue, Ned, but check probably the quickest way to do it is to check the town website. And it'll be there, or you can call me, or you can call Philip.
so from a practical perspective, it seems to me that the commission should be continuing to the next available date,
Yes,
which is presumably February 20, but could be subject to change based on the town clerk.
well said. You are an I daughter and a T crosser, and you are correct.
Unfortunately, there was an I that didn't get dotted previously, or we'd be through tonight, but we'll be on to February.
All right, fair enough.
All right.
All right, thanks,
If
Ned.
if I may, I know that you have a couple of other matters, but number 4,
Yes,
which is 510 Highland Street,
Yeah, it's number 5.
or number 5, I'm sorry.
All right.
yeah, that's okay with me. Anybody have any objections to moving 5 up on the agenda? So Ned can retire gracefully for the evening. That is for the public's benefit. That's an enforcement order at 510 Harlan Street. The issue was authorized, the enforcement order was also authorized by me, signed by Philip, and inspected the next day, I think, or maybe 2 days later by Steve Ivas. And it appears that the homeowner is doing something to alter the jurisdictional areas. So we asked her to stop and present the plans to us. And we put today's date. It's actually written right on the enforcement order. It was signed by Philip to make a presentation tonight as to what the plans are and if there's a notice of intent required, that we have that notice of intent. And since that time, I think that the homeowner has retained Ned Cochran to represent her. And so tell
That's
us.
right. And we're retaining Russ Waldron to delineate wetlands. We think there are 2 isolated wetlands within proximity to the work that was being done. So Russ will be out either this Friday or Monday to delineate the wetlands. We'll have a survey done with respect to that, and we'll have hopefully the appropriate filing, whether it's an RDA or NOI filing for hearing in February.
Do you know, just from your, guesstimate, whether or not there are any off-property wetlands that would still extend 100 feet onto the applicant's property?
I don't know enough about that. I haven't seen the site myself. I'm going to be out there when Russ is out there to delineate, and we'll know more when that happens.
Okay.
And
I
John,
think,
this
Tom,
is,
you were, yes, Steve?
this is Steve. We did not look on the northern side of the property, but I will say that there's a hill that goes straight down on the north side. So I would be surprised if there were any wetlands on that side that extend up to the property itself.
All right, what about on the south side?
The south side is where the wetlands were. Yes.
Correct.
2
But is
small
that within
wetlands.
100 feet of?
Yes. 2
Okay,
small
but is some of
wetlands.
that off of Dr. Anderson's, is that off of her property?
No, both on her property. 2 small isolated vegetated wetlands.
Okay, but the main wetlands next door, because I know Tom Palmer is familiar with that. I think you were involved in it what, 15 years ago?
Yes,
Yes, I
2006.
can visualize it, how it was then. And yeah, I would say there were wetlands that more or less straddled the line that was perpendicular to Highland Street. Not big wetlands, but they were there.
All right, see, I don't have in my mind where the alteration is. I heard it was a driveway, but does she have like a U-shaped driveway?
I think so, and there was a failure of the support on the edge of the driveway that she was having shored up. And so it's repairing an existing condition. I don't know the distance from the wetlands. I think when I did speak with Steve, he estimated something like 50 feet or so, but obviously that they need to be clearly delineated and surveyed so that we can present a plan to the commission.
All right. And currently, I know we've got a big rainstorm coming tonight and tomorrow, but currently, is there some kind of a erosion control there, Steve? You'd know this, you've been there.
Yes, very well done erosion control and silt fence. Both,
Good. And the silt fence is in the ground?
yes.
Yeah, my understanding is that contractor did all of the proper preparation with
Yes.
respect to wetland protection for the work, and all of that remains in place.
All right. And by the way, just as a side note, I spoke to the contractor over the phone, and he was extremely polite and very civil and responsive, which is good news.
Right.
All right, thanks. So with that said, I think we're ready to continue this until February date to be determined, hopefully the 20th.
Great. Thank you
All
for taking that out of order.
All right, thank you very much then.
Take care.
That's 1 and 5, so let's go to 2 now, which is request for certificate of compliance at 0 Central Avenue. This is a gas company. Do we have a presenter? Tracy, is that you?
Hi, yeah, sorry, just taking me a
Perfect.
minute to get unmuted and to turn my my camera on. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
So this project, we had come before you guys, I think in the spring, to get our approval. And I'll just quickly remind everybody what the project was. There was a pipe that was corroded under a brick culvert along Central Ave. It was exposed like underneath in the culvert. So the gas company essentially wanted to go in and it went over the brook. We updated the pipe so that it's not corroded anymore, pulled it out, and did some work within the existing roadway and within the within the culvert. Everything was capped. We sort of, rerouted the brook a little bit underneath the archway while we were doing work, and then restored the flow of the brook, and reseeded everything. We did some work on the road itself. There's a what am I trying to like a strip of grass where some of the work needed to be completed. So that was reseeded and covered. The area was closed and cleaned up, and the work is completed. And
Tracy,
we've included.
Can I ask a question? Right there where you are
Yeah,
on
sure,
that strip. I see a photograph and it looks like there's a new tree there. Was that planted by the gas company? It's the last photograph in your package.
Oh, you know what? I don't know. I'm so sorry. I was out on maternity leave while they completed it, so I can't tell you for certain if that tree was planted by the company. But I could certainly reach out and get an answer for you and have it answered for you by tomorrow.
John,
which photo are you looking at?
It's the third photograph in the package. It's the last one in the package, the last page.
Oh, hold on a second.
Mr. Chairman, that looks like one of the units from the tree initiative in Milton.
I don't think that's new. I run that route quite regularly, and I believe that I know that tree.
You say up to 2 years, Ingrid?
Impressive, Ingrid.
Well, the thing is, because of my knees, I try to go on soft surfaces, so I'm constantly dodging these guys. I think so. I think so, Arthur.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Looks like a red maple.
All right. Thank you, Tracy. I apologize for the interruption. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I feel pretty confident. That's not a
No
new
worries,
tree.
no worries at all. I was like, I don't know. I was on maternity leave. I'm so sorry. Yeah, so anyways, the project was successful. We were able to get the gas main replaced. There's no longer corroded pipe exposed in the archway. And they were able to, complete work and not disrupt the flow of the brook and keep everything clean while they were doing work. And everything's been restored to how it's been completed. We did submit a stamped plan, or sorry, a stamped letters saying that everything had been completed to the plans that had been submitted. And I included that. It is attachment B.
Right, I've got it in my hand, and
you.
it scared me because I don't know what a sleeper block is. So, Ingrid, you better be careful crossing the bridge now because there are no sleeper blocks supporting it. You're gonna have to help me. Is this an important item?
The sleeper block?
Yeah.
No. It's so
Yeah, I want to know what it is now too. Exactly
Oh.
what is it?
That's a pretty scary memorandum.
It
Because
blocks
we're
citrus.
We're missing the vibration monitoring, and we're missing the sleeper blocks. And I don't know what that means, but it sounds like the blocks are designed to support the bridge, and if they were part of the order of conditions and they weren't placed or implemented, that doesn't sound like a good. That's not a good thing. I don't think
they are supports. I'm trying to figure out what that.
And just for clarification, I don't believe that the Conservation Commission required vibration monitoring. Was that?
No.
That wasn't in our order of conditions.
No.
And these, can you at least clarify whether or not the sleeper box were something like a construction phase control or support, or if it's something that was supposed to be installed as a permanent?
it's I hear what you're saying. However, this is a stamped plan, and the engineer says that in general conformance with the plans dated May 30th, 2023, etc. So he's saying, was the construction done, whether it's an order of conditions or not? Was it
Yep.
done in general conformance with the plans dated May 30, 2023, based on field observations conducted and reported on during construction? And then it says it was noted that there were exceptions in relation to the installation of the support blocks and the implementation of the vibration monitoring. So the engineer is saying that's part of the plans.
Yeah. No, the reason I'm asking is to understand whether or not there's a field change to the design, that something is not present, or if those certain actions weren't completed by the contractor, just to understand the effect of the change.
I think there was a field change and they didn't use the sleeper blocks because something else was implemented in place of them. But I cannot necessarily speak to exactly what was used. I could certainly get that question answered for you from one of the engineers, but I can't speak to that directly.
Well, if the conservation members can go to the last two paragraphs of the page, and it's only a single page. That's not true. It's a 2-page document. No, it's a 1-page document. Memorandum. And the last two paragraphs says, in accordance with the original contract plans, we acknowledge that the sleeper blocks, in quotes, were not installed, and the vibration monitoring did not take place. Nevertheless, upon conducting post-construction field observations, it was determined that there were no significant deficiencies attributable to the construction piece. I have no idea what that means, and that doesn't sound like engineering talk to me.
Sounds
It was
contradictory
determined
too.
that there were no significant deficiencies.
Doesn't it sound contradictory?
You
No
got- you
Yes,
significant
gotta-
they say,
deficiencies. But they didn't.
we
but
didn't
they
do the blocks, but there were no deficiencies. That's
Deficiencies.
what they said. We didn't do the blocks, but there were no deficiencies.
So I think the ask would probably be from Tracy to get us a clarification on,
What was used in place of the sleeper blocks?
yeah, and then also if when it says vibration monitoring did not take place, is there, I don't know if that was a.
It
intended to
wasn't
be
a it wasn't a
specification for the
requirement.
contractor
But I
to do it.
can ask the engineers why they chose not to perform the vibration monitoring.
Yeah, just to confirm that there's not supposed to be any sort of active vibration monitoring as part of the installation, which I can't see there would be, but.
Well, and again, Hans, apropos of your point, the last paragraph says that furthermore, the structural condition of the bridge is that, well, first of all, starting, it says, apart from the exceptions mentioned above, it goes on to say the structural condition of the bridge was observed and found to be unaffected by the installation of the replacement 12-inch concrete coated steel gas main. I would like to know what do you mean by observed to be unaffected? It sounds like somebody's eyeballing it and saying, yeah, it's okay. I'd like to know what the basis for this conclusion that it was unaffected to be. Because right now it says simply it's observed to be unaffected. But I think we need a clarification of those points, and I think that's what you were saying, Alex. Correct? Is that something you could do?
I absolutely can reach out. Yeah, sorry, I'm not the engineers. So yes, I can certainly get those clarified for you guys and get some answers back to you.
That's any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate what Tracy said about the vibration. We want to find out whether or not that was a requirement. And with respect to the sleeper blocks, on what is the pipe, how is the pipe installed then if it's not on sleeper blocks? Is it on hangers? Is it? I'd like to know, maybe even see a photograph of that, of the pipe installation.
Well, the pipe, I will see if I can get a picture of the installation from the engineers, and see if they can give you that. Obviously,
Okay,
when we were, yeah, sure. When we were out doing monitoring, our job was to make sure that, you know, nothing was happening into the wetlands
Right.
and things like that. So, but I'll see if I can reach out and see if the engineers took any photographs of the actual, you know, pipe going in and how they did that. I can't promise they did because I didn't do that part, but we'll see what additional information I can get for you.
And the document that I have is not stamped.
Yeah, but that's true. I think it's signed by Charles A. Parker.
It's
Hacker.
Yeah, it's signed, prepared by Charles Parker PE and Michael O'Brien, and their signatures right up at the top. But
Should it not be stamped?
Yes.
Yeah, there could be something on there that lists the PE registration.
we'll get that. All right, I will get that for you as well.
Oh, that's perfect. And I think, Tracy, you heard our discussion about the continuance, so we can continue this until the February date. We know it's not going to be the 13th, and we think it's going to be the 20th.
Okay, totally fine.
That gives you enough time?
Oh, for sure. I'll probably have all the information by tomorrow, you know, pending the storm and whether or not it knocks out my power tonight.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you very much for appearing and giving us your information and insight. Any other questions from commissioners or members of the public? Hearing none, we'll continue this to the February date to be determined. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
All right, good night. Hey, and congratulations. Mister. I know she was out on maternity leave, so that's usually good news. Number 3 is notice of intent 600 Canton Avenue, 85 Highland Street. Devin, I saw you somewhere in Branch Lane. I see you there as well. Devin, I think you're on.
Yes. Good evening, Chair and fellow Commissioners. Devin Howe from Beals Associates. Here representing the owner and applicants, Winter Valley Residences, as well as Branch and Betsy Lane. I'll apologize to the Commission. Back in November, I last minute had to cancel just due to some sickness with COVID. Did my turn. If the chair would like, we've submitted a letter dated November 1st, 2023. My plan tonight, chair would like, is to go through the quickly and briefly go through the letter and how we believe we've addressed all the remaining concerns of the commission, as well as the agent, Steve Ibis.
That's a good approach. You're on. Thank you.
All right. Can I get host sharing or screen sharing abilities, please?
Yes. You should have it now, Devin.
All right, perfect. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So we had submitted this plan back in with the letter. Various things that we've either added, removed, or clarified on the plans. The first was sidewalk. Steve had asked whether or not, if the commission recalls, there's excuse me, a boulder wall that extends really around the entire ponded area. There's a small section right here where that, if the commission remembers, there's that riprap swale, really the overflow from the pond. There was a boulder missing. We added a note to the plan that we would add a boulder to complete the circulation of that pond. The next item was during the site walk, there was concern whether this area that I'm highlighting, this triangular area, was jurisdictional or not. I think it was Mr. Palmer's comment. We removed wetland flag A20 that you'll see on this plan, and we connected wetland flags A19 and A21 to show that this area is jurisdictional. The next item, which was probably the biggest item of discussion during the site walk, was regarding the 20-foot wide invasive species control. Move that from the plans. That was proposed all the way around both the pond and the wetland resource area. That's been removed. And we've also, to address that comment, because that 20-foot wide access was going to also provide the access for construction equipment to get in there and remove the sediments from the pond. We've revised our note in the top left-hand corner of our sheet that the contractor will need to use swamp mats or some sort of other acceptable access mat to navigate into the pond during a dry period and excavate the pond and all the invasives and sediment buildup. The last item was relative to operation and maintenance of the outlet control structure. We've included a checklist and a form of our proposed operation and maintenance of the outlet control structure that's located right at wetland flag A21 here. Commission recalls there's that outfall pipe that extends down towards really the Highland Canton Ave direction. That's the extent of what I have to present tonight. Happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
I can't remember if this was part of our discussion initially, but I would appreciate that this is a notice of intent, so we've got conditions to add. I'd like to make sure that before construction actually begins, and when I say construction, I'm talking about the excavation of the debris from the pond, that you notify Steve Ivas so as a pre-construction meeting.
Okay.
All right, comments, questions from commission members? I mean, it appears that the response, as is indicated in the November 1st letter, and Devin, we all have a copy of that as well as your plans. It appears to me, at least according to my memory, that you responded to everything that we had asked. But I do ask the other commission members if they have any other questions, or if there were some questions asked that were not responded to.
May I speak, John? Can you hear me?
I can, sure.
Yeah, I think the items I was concerned about have been addressed. Mainly, the issue of excavating the pond without tramping around the rim. Instead, as I understand it, the equipment will either be on the lawn edge, I guess that's the north side of the pond, or in the pond. And the rest of the border won't be disturbed, although I think there is a plan to remove the dead pines that fell in the pond. So, yeah, I think to me, it's going out of the right way at this point.
That's good. Thank you, Tom. Any other comments or questions, suggestions?
I would just add, Mr. Chairman, that this is very consistent with the sidewalk.
Yes. Agreed. All right. Anything else? Any members of the public that would like to ask a question or make a comment? And this is a notice of intent. So is there a motion to issue the order of conditions according to these revised plans, with the additional condition that there be a pre-construction, pre-excavation, I guess is the right word, notification and meeting with Steve Ivas.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right. And similarly, we have standard conditions, Devin, which I'm sure you're aware of, that during the course of the excavation, the equipment, and I'm presuming that the equipment's got a hydraulic arm and some hydraulic fluid in it, that they not be stored or refueled in our jurisdictional area overnight.
Okay.
That's part of our standard practice. But with those conditions, is that your motion, Mr. Doyle?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. I got it. I saw Todd's hand. I heard Tom's voice. So we've got 2 seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Arthur Doyle, how do you vote,
Yes.
sir? Tom Palmer,
Aye.
Hans,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Ingrid,
Aye.
and John Kieran, I vote yes as well. Thank you. That's unanimous. You've got your order of conditions. I didn't hear from your branch, but thank you very much for your consistent input and support for this. And Devin, I thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda is number 4. This is Russell Pond at Wollaston Golf Course. And I think, Kelly, I saw you. There you are.
Hi.
Hi.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Kelly Durfee Cardoza. I'm with Avalon Consulting Group, and I'm representing Wollaston Golf Club. I also have with me Charles Grandin, who is the club's general manager. This is a follow-up to our appearance at your last meeting. We had asked at that time that you issue an administrative modification to the order that was issued in your October meeting. I know that some of the people who are here this evening weren't here last time, so I'm happy to present that information again if you think this is appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
I think it is.
Okay. So when we were before you in October, we asked that the order be issued for 5 years. And the order did not reflect that, but it was my understanding that the commission had voted in favor for that. And the reason for it is because we're proposing to do the work in 3 phases. Each phase will be done in a separate year. And just if you do the math, if we have a 3-year order, we're not going to get 3 years in. The second thing that was in the order that was unexpected by the applicant was the requirement for the hydro rake to be removed from the water every single day and parked in the maintenance facility. The issue related to this is simply one of expediency and necessity. Solitude, who does the work, is a group of professionals. This is one of the primary things they do. They are at this point in time the only company in Massachusetts doing the work. They have never been asked to remove the barge outside of the water. It's treated as a boat, and they do work in drinking water supplies, public water supplies, and they work both for the state and DCR and other state agencies. It's going to take about 45 minutes or so for the barge to be loaded into the water, and then they have to secure it so that they can transport it safely. And then it's again 45 minutes to take it out. So that's approximately 20% of the time that they will be doing the work. And so it's 20% more time, and therefore for Wollaston, it's 20% more money for them to be able to do this work. And we believe that it's not necessary to do this for it to be done safely. A question was raised the last time about the hydraulic fluid. It's a biodegradable, essentially a vegetable oil that's used. It's not standard hydraulic fluid. There is a spill kit on the barge at all times, and the staff that's there is fully trained. And then the final request that we made was that there are some clerical corrections that need to be included in the order. There's no issuance date. We've asked that you correct the scale on the plans, and then correct or add where it's missing the DEP file number so that the pages within the document all reflect one file number. So those are the requests that we made last time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sure. And Philip, you may be able to answer these questions. I know you went back and listened to the tape recording of the meeting, but I do remember discussing the number of years. And we typically do 3, 2, or 1. And so we did talk about the length of time. And I thought that there was a consensus developing as long as we received an annual report, which Kelly, you agreed to, or I think the applicant agreed to.
We did. I agreed to it on behalf of the applicant. We're submitting you an annual report now that documents the pesticide use, which is approved as for nuisance vegetation management under a different order. And what we would intend to do is add an appendage to that, if you will, so that you'll get it all at the same time. It'll talk about all of the work that's being done in the pond.
Understood. So we've got the number of years at issue, but there's an agreement that there's an annual report. I think that made most of us pretty happy. On the hydraulic rake, my understanding at the time that I took the vote, that I made my vote, was that it would be removed from the water, as is our standard. It's our performance standard that we always use. That both refueling and overnight storage takes place out of the resource area. I do remember a discussion as to how far away the storage facility is at the golf course. And I thought there was some discussion about having a place, sort of in between, so you don't have to take it that far, but a place that it's out of the water where there could be some kind of spill control mechanism. Because if it spills in the water, it's gone. And some of these hoses, when they pop, they pop. So it's not as if everything's going to drip out or leak out. It's under pressure, and my concern is leaving it in the water, and that's consistent with what we've done for the last 30, my 32nd year doing. I don't remember any exceptions. Like Kelly, I acknowledge you said that we didn't ask you to do that on the hydro raking before, but I didn't think that was a pretty small pond, and I didn't think it was stored overnight at all. But you can correct me. I don't know. I
went back and looked, and it was indeed stored overnight. just so that you know, Solitude has said they've never been asked to do this, that it's a boat, and the state doesn't require that all boats be removed from all water bodies every single night.
Well, boats are boats, but hydraulic equipment is different.
But this is vegetable oil
Which is
in
not
the
water. Ingrid, what's the biodegradable claim mean to us? You're on
Ingrid's
mute,
on mute.
Ingrid.
I just realized that. Sorry, I started talking without noticing. I don't know the difference in biodegradability. I think that, I mean, Kelly, I get your point. The difference in my mind is toxicity, more toxicity than biodegradability. It seems that, standard hydraulic fluid is much more toxic compared to something relatively innocuous like vegetable oil. But in terms of dispersibility or biodegradability, I don't know, and I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't that much of a difference. It may be that it's more viscous, which would make it less dispersible.
If I may, just to clarify here.
I can't speak to it though.
A release of hydraulic fluid, whether or not it's biodegradable or plant-based, would still constitute a release that would require notification to that could require notification to DEP or EPA, depending on the circumstances. So I've dealt with this a number of times before, and I understand that the hydraulic fluid may be marketed as a plant-based or soy-based, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't constitute a spill under regulations if a release were to occur.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that point.
And so that's the intent of the commission, is to the greatest extent possible to avoid that condition, having equipment unattended for an extended period of time.
And you may be able to, I don't know how much of the 45 minutes you're talking about, and I get it, it's going both ways. But I don't know how much of that is getting the boat or the barge to your storage facility, or if you can simply get it away from either our jurisdiction, the 100 feet, or at least to a flat area where you could have some kind of a spill control, erosion control, so that if there was some kind of a bursting of a pipe or leakage, whatever you want to call it, that it would not get to the water. And there's a mechanism to do that. So if that would save you time, you don't have to get it all the way to the facility. Because I think I have an idea of, I don't know where your in and out is. On one side of the pond, the facility is not that far away, but on the other side of the pond, it is. So I don't know where your entrance area is, but I think we could work with you to maybe, cut that 45-minute time down, as long as we get it out of the water and not, not put it on a slope that goes right back to the pond. But I think you've got some flat land that's, sufficiently apart from the water that you could satisfy everybody. I know anything.
I know Charles has an opinion, so let me just ask one question beforehand. So how far away, assuming that the club can manage this, how far away would you want it to be?
Well, our standard protocol is to get it to 100 feet. But I don't think the difference between 50 feet and 100 feet is going to make much of a time saving. So I just say our performance standard has always been the 100 feet.
Charles?
Yeah, so this is the lowest point in the golf course, obviously, around the entrance that everybody knows. And to get in and out of that area, we're going in and across greens, fairways, all those areas every day with enough equipment doing the removal of the byproduct. But then to take this piece of equipment in and out every day, we would have to take it up to the main parking lot, which is a half a mile away, lock it down on a trailer, take it up there and store it overnight. It would, we've talked to them, it's 20% of our time on this. When we originally talked about going through this process, I looked at it as the new GM at the time as a way to reduce herbicides and chemicals used in these ponds for the health of the animals and for the grass and the golf course itself. Now, the cost of this versus using herbicides and chemicals is 5 times the more expensive every year to the club to do this. If we're going to lose 20% right off the bat, then at this point, I think we probably just would go continue to use herbicides and pesticides that we use to knock down the weeds and everything. I mean, we thought that this was a better way to remove the invasive plant vegetation along the shore, which we know will grow back. It comes back every year. And that's why we like the 5-year approach to this, because it's a big pond and we only have about a 2-week window. But, you know, at $50,000 a year, we're willing to do this, but we want to do it as economically as possible. So if it's not going to work, then maybe it's just not going to work.
If that's your position, that's good, but it doesn't resonate with me. It sounds like you're saying either do it your way or you're going to go back to herbicides. I'm not impressed with that argument.
To clarify, so 100 feet outside the wetland buffer equals a half mile. I don't know. Can you?
You can throw a baseball, Charles. We've been there. You can throw a baseball from the pond to the facility where your storage equipment is.
Well, that's in wetland. A lot of that storage facility is in wetland.
But it's 100 feet away. It's not in the wetlands.
It's not 100 feet away from where we're taking it in and out. It's about 350 yards, 400 yards.
That's why
in the path that we have.
It's not within 100 feet.
No.
Oh, if you go around the roadway, of course.
Yeah, well, we have to take it on the road. I'm not going to traipse it across the golf course.
That's why I thought I was suggesting some kind of a compromise. If you can get it out into a flat area 100 feet away from the pond, you know, perhaps closer to Randolph Avenue.
I mean, that would be. I can't park it on the road though. I have traffic going in and out of the course and the club. We're open.
Oh, so this is the convenience of the golfers.
No, this isn't for the convenience of the golfers. It's for the health of our pond. That pond is our irrigation.
No, what I meant was where you store the boat. All right, any
it's
member?
It's going to be destructive. We're going to have to do a lot of repair and you know, I mean, in addition to the $50,000 in this expense, I mean, we're going to spend another 10 in just repairing paths and roadways that we rebuild every year. So if it's not going to work, it's not going to work at this point.
Commission members, comments, questions?
It seems to me that it would be perhaps better for the pond if the treatment was mechanical rather than herbicide. That's just my opinion. I don't really have much sense of what a hydro rake is, and I can't even visualize it. If it is a boat, though, I get the argument that removing the boat from the water every night is more than is typically done with most boats. It might even, all that going in and out would provide more opportunities for leaks or dripping than if it just stayed in one place. But I also get it that we have a rule that we've applied and we're looking to still apply it.
Okay.
I've got a question. How long do you anticipate the duration of the use of the hydro rake to be in the pond?
2 weeks annually.
2 weeks.
2 weeks total or 2 weeks per visit?
2 weeks per year. So they'll be there for 2 weeks.
Will be on site for 2 weeks each year.
Yeah,
So a total of 6 weeks over 3 years, if you want to look at it that way.
yeah.
And respectfully, if it comes in and out, then we would expect a 20% increase on that, because the 2 weeks is what Solitude estimated in the absence of this condition.
All right, so proceed, any more questions? Because I just want to sort of present what the procedural posture is at this stage.
So, yeah, just a comment or a question. So we don't really know exactly what this Solitude device is, correct? I mean, have we seen anything about?
Sure, I provided a picture early on. Let me see if I can't pull that up for you now. I just
The
Yeah, I
original-
wasn't at
there was a
this- I wasn't
picture in your
present
app.
at that meeting.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah,
picture in
sorry,
your
Kelly.
application. Let me
Okay.
let me bring it up.
And Kelly, once you find it, you can share your screen.
Thanks, Steve.
Sure.
I had the site plan ready, but I didn't have this piece ready. Sorry. So can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a picture of a hydro rake. It's essentially a barge at the bottom with paddle wheels. And there is a hydraulic arm, which with a rake attachment, it's essentially a York rake that will bring the material up. The equipment moves fairly slowly. The paddle wheel will drive it over to the shore where they'll dump it into those dump trailers, pulled by a rubber tired tractor. And then the tractor will go along over the plywood on the ground, and we have erosion control on the plan. And then that material will be taken across the street, or the driveway, if you will, up to a compost area that's outside your jurisdiction. It'll be placed there, cut with sand, and then they will use this as a compost material for their maintenance of the golf course over time.
And this is to remove the water lily. Is it also effective for stuff like Phragmites, or is that a different?
Phragmites, cattails, Phragmites, water lilies.
Hmm.
Steve could probably speak to what's in that pond more better than I.
The target is the water lily, which is considered the nuisance vegetation.
Okay. So this
and so
looks, yeah. I'm just looking at the picture and I'm thinking, unlike a boat, which you were making the analogy to, that has a hull that encloses all of the motorized parts and, potential hydraulic. This looks pretty exposed. The machinery actually looks pretty exposed to me. Like, I'm not an engineer. Any comments from people who have more of an engineering background? I'm on the veggie side, the biology side.
I'm curious, is it registered as a boat or as a vehicle?
I don't honestly know. I doubt it's able to be taken over the roadway. It's essentially a barge mounted piece of equipment.
I don't think that's registered.
Would you be able to, you said you had the site plan queued up. Can you
Sure.
show that?
Can't be too much further. Okay, how's that? You probably feel like you were just on a roller coaster, but
There it is. Yep.
do you have it now?
Yep.
So in year one, we would propose to work in this area. And the onload, offload places are here and here. In year two, they would be here and here. In year three, we're showing 3 locations, and the maintenance facility area is referenced here. What you'll notice is jurisdictional areas. This is the FEMA jurisdiction, so isolated land subject to flooding. And then the blue is the bordering vegetated wetland. So at this location, to come outside of the wetland, you would simply go here, up to this area, assuming that we can find a reasonably flat spot. Here, you're going up to the cart path.
No, that cart path never was put in. That's woods.
I'm sorry, but what we've proposed is that there's a path made with plywood. And that's the path that's been proposed to travel along. So that would just be a plywood path, not a cart path, but you'd run along that plywood path until you could get a flat spot that's outside the 100-foot buffer zone. Here you'd come up, this is in the middle of the fairway. Here is very similar. And this part is very steep. So you'd have to come up. There's a place between these 2 areas that's reasonably flat and outside their jurisdiction.
Right.
Can you do that again, Kelly? Because I lost the cursor there. The 2 places that is reasonably flat that you were saying.
So right here, there are practice tees or practice greens, if you will.
I can't see your cursor.
Oh.
On the far left.
Can
you see it if I wiggle it around?
Yeah, now I see it. I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So the area where we come out of the water is generally the flatter spot between these 2 areas here. And that there's a very narrow bordering vegetated wetland, partly because there's a change in elevation here. So you'd have to come out here and find something that's reasonably flat. So that would work in year 1. In year 2, you'd either come out here and outside the jurisdiction at this location or outside the jurisdiction somewhere here. In year 3, it's a little more challenging. We have 3 locations.
Very
You
challenging.
could come out, and then there's one area right here, but it's right on the golf course. I mean, Charles would have to tell me whether that would be acceptable, but there's a slope as you're coming up, and then there's a portion of the fairway here, and the approach. This is number 12, the approach to the green.
And so to be clear, I just want to ask a question. So it's not infeasible for the entire time. It's difficult during certain years. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I'm just throwing this out. Would you potentially be able to provide a location, a staging location that would be outside of the water body itself, and as far as practical outside of the buffer, but not necessarily having to be on a paved area, but to just within a reasonable distance to temporarily stage the equipment that would have spill control in place. So basically a setup of hay bales or where you park it temporarily for the 2 weeks that it's there, close enough that you can get it in and out, but not necessarily having to take it all the way back to a maintenance facility.
I mean, all these areas are still pretty low. And as Kelly's got them highlighted here, they're within the wetlands.
Within wetlands or within the buffer?
Within a buffer. Yeah. I mean, they're only, you know, like especially the third year on the far right side, we're only, you know, the elevation only goes up about 10 feet there, and we're only about 20 feet outside of the pond itself. And then to go all the way back across the golf course every day, I mean, that's tough. And that's, you know, that is actually the part that we need to focus on the most is that, and we may, you know, look to switch this because we're seeing so much growth in that far right side every year. And there's still so much silt runoff from Route 28 in that part of the pond. I mean, this is, you know, to remove vegetation, to increase water volume in the pond too. I mean, you know, the last thing we want to do is jeopardize this pond. It is our livelihood. You know, and we trust Solitude with them in our discussions we've had with them and how careful they are with this equipment. It's just that the expense is almost outgrowing the benefit if we'd have to lose 20%.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Steve Ivas here. Looking at the original assumptions, why not go back and have Solitude add a few lines to the operational plan and do an inspection before and after each day of the hoses on the machinery? That might do it. That's just a possibility. Certainly see when some of that oil or hydraulic fluid is actually on the surface of the pond. So it's easily detectable, I would think. Would you agree with that, Kelly?
Yes, and I will also say that if the hoses are inspected before it goes into the water at the beginning of the project and then daily,
exactly,
that they would have some idea, and clearly they would not be worn hoses.
Well, the hose won't burst overnight because it's not under pressure unless it's running.
Right.
That's true.
So
there's only pressure in the hose. There's only pressure in the hose when it's running.
That's right. And you would inspect in the morning before you start it up, and you'd inspect in the afternoon or evening when you closed it down. That's just a suggestion. Might work.
Now you're making me more nervous because if that picture of the machinery, and I acknowledge that Ingrid said it from a non-engineering perspective, and I'll say it from a non-engineering perspective. That's a pretty exposed piece of equipment. It's not the hull that most people think about when you think about a boat, like, you know, Noah's Ark. It's not that at all. That hydraulic arm is right over the water. So if it bursts, we got a problem. And we know just from the history of construction projects that if we're talking about backhoes, they burst all the time. And yes, they're supposed to be inspected as a regular course. I agree with the fact that if it's not running, you're not going to be pressurized and you're going to be leaking as opposed to bursting. But I haven't heard anything that suggests that we should ignore our own performance standard that we uniformly impose. And I don't think that the additional cost is so significant as to make it infeasible, particularly when you don't have to take it out and drive it. I don't know where the half mile came from, but you don't even have to take it as far as the facility shed, which is paved with a berm, and we permitted that, so we know where the berm is. I don't think that there would be an onerous condition to have to pull it out, particularly if it's not going to have to go a half a mile. I don't know where the 45 minutes comes from, but my view is that we'd be violating our own standard if we say leave it in the water.
And I agree, especially considering that it's going to be there on site for 2 weeks. I mean, it's not a piece of equipment running for 2 weeks is not gonna operate without needing any refueling, without needing to do any maintenance whatsoever. So, I mean, given that time frame, I mean, the preference of the commission has always been that any maintenance, and this is the reason that we have the standard, is so that any refueling, and if they have to work on the machine, it can be done outside of the buffer zone if possible, and outside the resource area, which is more important.
I'll just remind you that we did agree to not refueling in by pouring fuel into the tank. It's a 40-gallon tank. They use 10 gallons a day. So for the first 4 days that they're working, they don't need to add any. Other than that, they would use a plastic gas diesel can with a quick connect that connects into the fuel line, and therefore there's no fuel in that line until the connection has been made, and then it would go through that way. So there's no risk of them standing there and pouring diesel into a small hole. So that part they've addressed.
Ingrid, any thoughts, concerns, questions? Anybody, members of, of the commission, obviously, but members of the public? All right, so the procedural posture that we find ourselves in, I believe, is that we actually issued, voted on, and executed an order of conditions. So procedurally, what we're doing here is the applicant is asking us to revise the order, which did require that it be removed. And I know, Kelly, I think you were articulate in stating the different conditions that were raised, and I wrote them down and then I put them down. But they had to do with a clerical mistake. I think we had the wrong number and the date of issuance. Those are easy ones. Those are ministerial. That doesn't require a revision. But the removal from the pond, I think, does require that. It would be a revision. So we'd have to have two votes. One would be whether or not it's a minor revision or a major revision. If it is voted to be a minor revision, then we would simply vote whether or not to revise the order of conditions. If it's a major revision, then you'd have to go back and file a new notice of intent. And this is a fairly common procedure for us because we were asked to do revisions periodically.
Before you proceed, excuse me, I just want to figure out where the 5 years comes in.
Oh, yeah, and that's one. You're right, I didn't say that. I've got the clerical mistakes with number 3. I'm going backwards. So I had the date, the scale, and the DEP number. That's ministerial. We can take care of that with a simple vote. The hydro rake removed from the water was the second, and the first one was the 5 years versus the 3 years. So, and I guess it depends, but the 5 years in my mind is negotiable as long as we get these annual reports, which keeps us up to speed with what's going on, and we could take corrective action if it didn't work, for instance. So I'm not really hung up on the 3 years versus the 5 years, but I am hung up on the hydro rake. And when I say hung up on it, I think it's a very clear question. Is this a minor revision or is it a major revision to the order of conditions that has already been executed? And does anybody have a different view of how it can be presented or should be presented? Keep in mind that we did execute the order of conditions and we did vote for it. So if there is no further discussion from members of the commission or the applicant or members of the public, I would suggest we entertain, or I will entertain, a motion as to whether or not this is a major revision or a minor revision to the existing order condition. And the this that I'm talking about is the most important issue, and that is whether to remove the hydro rake from the pond at night. So is there such a motion? I'm not hearing one, and I'm not making one. And without a motion to revise, the order will remain in effect. I'm not saying that decision has been made. I'm just saying that if there is no motion passed to revise the existing order of conditions, then the order of conditions will remain. But again, I'm separating the three different issues. The removal of the hydro rake is one. The 5 years versus the 3 years, which is what the order says, is two. And the third one would be the clerical mistakes, the date, the scale, and the DEP number. So I'm focused in on whether or not there is a motion to revise the order of conditions with respect to whether or not the hydro rake should be removed. So once again, I ask, is there such a motion?
Mr. Chairman, a question for clarification.
Yes.
The other two elements, will they not need a vote as well?
Yes, it will.
So
I'm separating the three issues.
right. Are you going to ask for 3 votes then?
Well, there'll be 6. Yes, there are 3. There'll be 3 separate categories of votes. Each one would have 2 steps.
Got it. I'm with you. Thank you.
Okay, so the first one is simply to remove the hydro rake, and I have not heard a motion. Hearing none, I'll move on to the second issue, and that is the 5-year as opposed to the 3-year. The order of conditions as currently executed says 3 years. And I believe the order itself says that it requires an annual report. So the motion would be to revise the 3 to make it a 5-year. And whether or not that would be a minor revision or a major revision. Is there such a motion on the 3 years versus the 5 years?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a
Yes.
and they're proposing to revise it to 5 years? Is there a second for that? Todd, I see your hand raised. It is second. And again, this I'm asking for clarification, Mr. Doyle, and that is whether or not this movement from 3 years to 5 years would also carry with it the requisite annual reporting.
Okay, because that language was already in there, correct? I think I'm looking at it here. Yes, that was already in.
Where are you?
43 renumbered to 44. Is that the language that you want for the annual reports? It specifically says annual reports regarding the results of any continued use of the previously approved chemicals and results of hydro raking. It seems like maybe that needs to be revised, or is that acceptable?
So the proposed written, what we're looking at, and Kelly, this was your submission, if you can't see it, but you've got, you've lined out after the first 3 lines, you've lined out the rest. But what it said originally was the last sentence was the 3-year extension is also contingent, parentheses, added special condition, close parentheses, that we receive annual reports regarding the results of any continued use of the previously approved chemicals and results of hydro raking. So that, Ingrid, that language would go along, I believe, with Arthur. That's why I'm asking for clarification. That language of the contingency that we receive annual reports would go with your motion to extend the 3-year permit to a 5-year permit.
That's my intention, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
And
So
Todd,
that would
you
not be
seconded it?
stricken.
Yes.
That it not be stricken.
Okay. I just want clarification on that point. Okay.
Okay. And Todd, do you still second it with that clarification?
Yes.
All right. Any further discussion on that issue? And the motion is to make this change, but you have to first say that that would be a minor revision. Is that your motion?
Yes.
Arthur? All right. Any further discussion?
I'm confused because having no change to the first condition, which the applicant says they can't abide by, wouldn't that inherently change the second piece.
No, it doesn't.
So-
The first part hasn't changed at all. All we're changing is the 3 to 5,
Okay,
right? So in the original order, which was 45, it says approval of use of the hydro rake for aquatic vegetation control within Russell Pond with provision made by the contractor to protect the banks of the pond when the hydro rake was entering and exiting the pond. The hydro rake machine should not be stored overnight in the pond, and any refueling would be done away from the pond at the site of the equipment storage facility currently utilized by the golf club. That remains in place. Arthur's only motion is to change the 3-year extension to a 5-year extension.
So John, if I can interrupt, the 3-year extension. So I think we're missing the initial numbered paragraph or sentence that establishes the extension. So that has to be also amended, correct? And I don't have it in front of me. I just have the 2 pages with the 44, 45, and 26 to 33. But old 43, new 45 must depend from another numbered sentence. Do you have it in front of you?
No, I was reading from the old 43, which is now 44.
Right, but
I'm reading from 43 typed.
right.
And that
I'm just thinking, is there another numbered sentence that establishes the extension? Because this looks like it's depending from something else.
we're only changing the 3 to a 5. That's the only motion.
Mr.
Because there
Chairman,
was no motion to change the removal from the pond.
Right, and so my question is that the only place that extension appears? Or is it established independently in another numerical numbered sentence?
No, I believe that's the special condition.
Okay, all right, that was the question.
Okay, is that clear to everybody? Because we're not changing the removal from the pond. There was no motion to do that. The only motion before the commission right now is whether to change the 3-year extension to a 5-year extension. So we're just literally, for Philip's purposes, the only thing you'd have to change is the word 3 and make it 5.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, can I ask about the use of the term extension? Because I think what we're asking for is the period of the order, not necessarily an extension. We're asking that you issue it for 5 years.
Yeah, you're correct, but I thought this was an extension of what you had had going way back for using the pesticides in the past.
No, that's a completely different order.
Okay.
So we're just asking not for an extension, but for the period of this order to be for 5 years.
All right. Now, just to get to the heart of the matter, Kelly, are we spinning our wheels here? Because you heard that there's no motion to change the removal from the pond. Given that, and we heard Charles indicate that it might not be worth it. I mean, are we spinning our wheels here by changing the 3 to a 5, or are you going to pull the notice anyway? And you don't have to answer that right now. You can think about it for a while.
If we were in your room, I would say, let me go outside and talk to Charles for 2 minutes. But in the absence of that, welcome to the world of Zoom. I think what we'd like to do is get an order that reflects what we believe you voted, which was that there would be a 5-year period for this order.
Okay. So then the language, and we should write the language so there's no question. The sentence where I am in the old 43, the existing paragraph 43 under special conditions. The first 5 lines will remain the same, or the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines will remain the same. Halfway through the 6th line, where it says The 3-year extension is also contingent. Parentheses, added special conditions, that we receive annual reports. That will now read, this 5-year order is
Right.
also contingent. Parentheses, added special conditions.
That's
Is that
better.
clear? Okay. Arthur, we're gonna do it again. Is
Okay.
your motion, sir, to propose a revision to change the language in the existing paragraph 43 from the 3-year extension is also contingent, etc., to the new language will be this 5-year order is also contingent, etc.
Correct.
All right. And the first order motion is whether or not such language would be a minor revision or a major revision. So is it your proposal that this is a minor revision?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Todd, do you
Minor
still?
revision.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Any further discussion on that? Hearing none, this is a roll call vote. So, Mr. Doyle, your motion, how do you
Yes.
vote? Todd, you
Yes.
seconded it.
Yep.
Tom Palmer,
Aye.
Hans,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Ingrid,
Yes.
Kieran, yes. Okay. So the third issue is whether or not we can make a ministerial correction for including the date of issuance, which will be today's date. The scale, and Kelly, you'll have to help me on that one. Is that the scale on the plan?
It
or
is
rough-
1 inch equals 40 feet. My
1 inch?
concern was that there's a title sheet on the top that's 1 inch equals 100 feet, but that wouldn't be consistent with the regulations. And we wouldn't have provided you with plans that were only at 100 scale for a notice of intent.
Got it. And Philip, do you have that?
I do, thank you.
All right. And then the third point is the DEP number was apparently incorrect.
Sometimes it's missing and sometimes at the beginning it's correct. At the end, it's a different number. And then at the final end, there's no numbers.
I'll
Okay,
make
so
sure it's
Philip,
consistent.
all right. And the first number is the correct number.
You are correct.
All right. So that appears to be a minor revision. Is there a motion to make those revisions?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Is there a second? Todd, thank you very much. Any discussion as to whether or not this is a minor revision or a major revision? No further discussion. Actually, did we take 2 votes on the other one? I think we only took the first one, that it was a minor revision, but we'll go back on this. So the motion right now is whether or not these clerical or ministerial corrections are minor revisions. That's the motion by Mr. Doyle, seconded by Todd. Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer,
Aye.
Hans,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Ingrid,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
by John Kiernan, yes, so that's unanimous. Those are changed. All right, now we're gonna stay with the same ministerial corrections. And is there a motion to make those? We've already decided that they're minor revisions. So now the motion is whether or not we will make those to the existing order conditions. Do you make that motion, Mr. Doyle?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you second that, Todd?
Yes.
All right, we've got to go through the vote again. Mr. Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer?
Aye.
Hans?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Ingrid?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So that change has now been made to the existing order conditions. I'm going to go back to the first order, going to the 5-year order. We voted that it was a minor revision, but I didn't take the second vote. The second vote is there a motion to make those minor revision changes to the existing order of conditions? This relates to the 5-year order as opposed to the 3-year extension.
There is, Mr.
Do
Chairman.
you have that vote, Mr. Doyle?
That is correct. Yes.
Todd, do you second that?
Yes.
And any discussion? Hearing none. Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
John Palmer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Hans, how do you vote?
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Ingrid,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
and I, John Kiernan, vote yes as well. So that one is done. And there is no motion, and there was no motion to make the amendment to remove the boat from the pond. So that part of special condition number 43 shall remain as it exists. Okay, I think we're done. Thank you very much, Kelly, Charles. Thank you very much for your patience and courtesy.
Can I just ask one question?
You
Again,
can ask a lot of questions.
I
Kelly.
haven't had a chance to speak to Charles, but if I read this out loud, the hydro rake machine should not be stored overnight in the pond, and any refueling would only be done away from the pond at the site of the equipment storage facility currently utilized by the golf club. So is it your opinion that if we were able to find, as you said, a flat spot outside of 100 feet or outside of the isolated land subject to flooding limitation, that would be consistent with this condition
I would
as it's
suggest putting forth something in writing to specify exactly what you're proposing, and we'll decide whether or not it requires an amendment to the order of conditions or not. Or if it's a minor change.
we had this discussion and you made the point that you were okay with it not going all the way up to the maintenance facility. And I'm trying to see whether the words as they appear on this page right now reflect that or not.
They do not.
Well, John, if they're outside the 100-foot buffer, anywhere around it, they're fine.
I think we're conflating two different issues. One, Todd, you're talking about the discussion and what appeared to be a consensus. Kelly's question is, what does it currently say? We have an existing order of conditions. And it says at the site of the equipment storage facility currently utilized by the golf club. That's that building you could see just north of Russell Pond. So that's a different question. Kelly's question was, what does it currently say? And it says at the site of the equipment storage facility.
So
you'd have to have a motion to, and the language would have to be very precise, that if there could be a flat spot outside of the 100 feet that's closer than the facility, would that be acceptable, assuming that there was a condition that there be spill control measures and erosion controls and et cetera?
But I guess what I'm saying, John, I'm confused. If they're outside the 100-foot buffer, we don't have any jurisdiction, do we? If they store it outside the 100 feet, we don't have jurisdiction.
Well, that's correct, but we've got to get it out of the pond. So our order currently says get it out of the pond.
No, I'm agreeing with you on that. I thought her question was, if they're outside the buffer zone, whether it goes up to the clubhouse or it goes to the maintenance building, if it's outside the 100-foot buffer, is that the question you're asking, or am I confused?
no, that's the question. I want to make sure that if I get off the phone with you and we talk to Charles and he says, I can find the extra 20% of money, and I don't know that this is the case, that it's clear to me that we can get outside of the 100-foot buffer zone and be legal and not have to go all the way up to the maintenance facility.
Yeah, that's what I understood when you said it.
Correct. And I'm not sure that says that here. So if there's an opportunity to fix it rather than having to come back to you another time, I'd like to try and get this settled so that we're all clear as to what we're dealing with.
All right. for the purposes of clarity, can you screen share 43? The original 43,
Yes.
because that could actually be done. You don't have to blow that one up, I think.
Okay. You can,
Yes, we can.
okay.
That's good. Thank you. That's good. So as we read through 43, you're asking whether we can change the second sentence beginning, the hydro rake machine should not be stored overnight in the pond, and any refueling would only be done away from the pond. And where it says, at the site of the equipment storage facility currently utilized by the club, that be deleted, and in its place, the words would be done away from the pond and outside of the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission.
My preference here with that language to read something along the lines of would be stored at one of the areas indicated on the site plan for designated for overnight storage of the piece of equipment. So I ultimately
we haven't designated that yet.
That would be my ask for the applicant, is to
Right.
provide a
Mark-
markup saying,
Yeah, mark them A, B, C, D, and so that there's no ambiguity. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes, it does. That'll require that you come back though, because we'd have to have it marked on the plan.
But let me ask you a question, John, if they're outside the 100-foot buffer zone and they want to store it anywhere, how do we have say if it's outside our jurisdiction?
Valid point.
Yeah, when they take that boat out, is what she's saying to us, and it's outside the 100-foot buffer, if they want to store it 102 feet outside the buffer zone, we don't have any say. Once
Well,
they
Todd, I understand what you're saying. That's actually what I said. Out of the pond and outside of the jurisdiction of the Conservation
right,
Commission.
but Hans wanted them to designate, and they don't have to designate once they get past the 100-foot buffer zone. They can do whatever they want after the 100 feet.
yeah, the reason I said that was because,
sir.
correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a couple of locations that are challenging, that the applicant indicates are challenging to get it outside the 100-foot buffer. So, and Kelly, is that an accurate statement?
Let me go back to the site plan, but yes, on the 12th hole, it's more challenging.
Can I comment on this?
Sure.
Yeah, I think what we're assuming here, and the challenge is, having been on the site for so long now, it's not like we're loading this in and out of a boat ramp. Okay, we're literally going in along the shore in an area that we think we can load this in, dropping a trailer into the water with a tractor, backing it in. And we don't know if it falls off 1 foot, 2 foot, 4 feet, 6 feet. It may not. Getting this apparatus in and out of the water every day is going to be a challenge. And it may only look like a short distance on a map, but you're driving across, traversing 4, 5, 6, 10% slopes of some of these side hills, and you got to strap this thing down, chain it down, and maybe you only have to move it a quarter of a mile. But that could take a long time because you're doing it with a tractor. You're not driving on a street with a trailer. I'm going to have Solitude back out to take a look at this and walk the site again. But I think they're going to tell me the exact same thing they told me the first time when they gave me the bid. These restrictions are going to be prohibitive.
Well, you're stuck with an order. We're trying to work with you here. The,
No,
the
I
existing order says you gotta take it up and put it in the
But
facility.
it's not,
We're
it's
trying to
not
make
as
it easier
simple
for
as
you.
it sounds.
100 feet's a lot better than a quarter of a mile.
I think we're risking it. Getting it in and out of the water itself is gonna be a challenge. Once for 2 weeks, let alone 10 times in 2 weeks.
So,
You know,
Kelly, I
then you
gotta go
run the
back to you.
risk
What
of
do you
rust.
want us to do?
I'd like you to really consider waiving the requirement of storing it out of the water. Maybe we ask Solitude and we'd incur the cost, if we ask for new hoses on the hydraulic fluid prior to the start of the project. So we know we're going into it with fresh hoses, which generally last about, 250 hours.
Charles, I'm not trying to cut you off, but we've already passed that point.
Okay.
You have an existing
I
order
guess we
that
have
says
to.
take it out. There was no motion to revise it. The existing order stands. We're trying to work with you to make it less
Okay.
onerous from your perspective, but we're not reconsidering.
But that's
our
not how I
refusal to
originally
vote.
approached it with Kelly.
Kelly, what would you like us to do?
I'd like you to say that we need to store it outside the 100-foot buffer zone. Or take your next hearing and let me talk to Charles and we'll come back to you with an answer that works for the club.
That makes more sense. And you might even want to address the issue that Hans brought up. Understanding it would be acceptable to us. It would be our standard practice just to get it out of our jurisdiction. That is our normal performance standard that's been uniformly applied for 30 plus years. So if you've got another plan, then
if that's,
please come back.
can I just, if that is the standard, who else is doing this hydro raking in Milton that I can call? Because this is the only company in the state that I know of, and they say they don't do it.
The standard is for equipment that's hydraulic and gas and diesel powered. That's the standard
Okay.
I'm referring to.
Yeah,
I'm
the
not talking about
same standard
hydro.
was applied for National Grid for the in-water work that was in stream that they just received a certificate of compliance on. Same standard was applied for DCR for a levee restoration or removal project where they were working in the stream. So, I mean, and I can provide you specific instances where working with barges offshore that are much larger than that piece of equipment where similar requirements are or protections are in place.
Okay. If I can get some contractors' names, that would help. Because I can't find anybody.
All right. Anything else?
So
Kelly, you want us to
We're
put
good.
you on the agenda for the February date? I think you heard our discussion will not be the 13th because of the town vote. But it most likely will be the 20th. But do you want us to put you on the agenda for that?
actually, I'm wondering if you would give us a few minutes to talk while you're looking at number 6, revote to correct clerical error extension permit at Houghton's Pond.
Of course.
And hear us again in, a few minutes, whatever that is for you.
That's fine. Thanks. Okay,
Thank
let's
you.
move on then. We'll adjourn on this issue temporarily to come back to it. And right now we'll move on to number 6, revote to correct clerical error extension permit at Houghton's Pond. Steve, can you explain this one, or is there anybody here that's?
I cannot, I'm sorry, I don't have the detail.
Philip, do you know anything about this?
The dates weren't included. I added the dates on the bottom, September 12th, 2025, and the original order was September 14th, 2019. They were missing when I showed it to Steve.
So, no, I'm looking at it. This is DCR.
Right, and when I filled it out, the dates that I added was September 12th, 2025. And the 14th, they weren't there when Steve saw the original. It was my mistake, not theirs.
Oh, I see. And it was last extended on September 14th, 2019. So it went to 2022. Is that correct? And then it was extended for another 3 years to 2025.
Right.
And help me out.
So is this expired already?
No, I think there's, if you go to page 1, authorization, it says the order of conditions or extension issued to the applicant or property owner listed on above, September 12th, 2023. Shouldn't that be
It should be
2022?
22, sorry.
Okay. So under B for authorization, September 12th, 2023 should be 2022.
Right.
Issued by Milton. For work at Houghton's Pond Hillside. Assessors map M, parcel 10 DCR. Recorded Norfolk. Book and page number, and then is hereby extended until September 12th, 2025, which would be a 3-year extension, which is
Right.
and then next to that, the date the order was last extended was September 14th of 2019. So it went from 19 to 22 and then from 22 to 25.
Right.
Okay. So what we've got in our packet just needs one other iteration, and that's to change the September 12th, 2023 to 2022. All right. Is there a motion to accept these as minor revisions?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Hans. Is there a second?
I'll
Thanks,
second, John.
Thanks, Ingrid. Any discussion? And we go through the vote here, and Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Tom Palmer,
Yes.
Hans,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Ingrid,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
and John, Kieran, and yes as well. So that's the minor revisions. Now, is there such a motion to make those revisions? Is that such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
All right, thanks, Hans. Ingrid, I'm sorry, are you seconding that?
Second, yeah.
Any discussion? Once again, Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer,
Yes.
Hans van Lingen,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Ingrid,
Yes.
Todd,
Yes.
and I, John Kiernan, vote aye as well. So those changes are made. Thank you very much, Philip. I appreciate that
Thank you.
correction. And that takes us now to approval of conservation minutes. And I can actually combine this with perhaps additional business, but I did talk to DEP, Alicia Geelan, who is a circuit rider for DEP, and we're within her jurisdiction, and she's very active and very good. She's sent us a lot of information. And I had a discussion with her yesterday about our site meetings and whether or not they can be public meetings. And as long as we conform and comply with the open meeting law, then that is permissible, as long as we announce them, make the public accessible. If in fact the public is not allowed onto private property, then we cannot deliberate. We can have a public meeting, go to do the site inspection, but we have to go back to public land where the public can participate in that. And we need to do minutes, and that's what I'm leading up to. That's why I'm combining this number with additional business. Keep in mind that these meetings are recorded. The Zoom meetings are all recorded. Back in the day when we were on site visits, Kathy Bowen used to walk around with a digital tape recorder, and DEP thought that was a good idea, and I think it's a good idea. I'd like to reinstitute that and talked to Philip today, and he said that they still have that digital tape recorder, so that he will take that to our site meetings. But we have to be careful that if, we should not be off in the forest by ourselves or with one or two other people. We should do our talking, and if there's any deliberating, and most certainly if there's a vote, we have to be together. And so we should make an effort to record, and all that can be done. Which leads me to the consideration of these minutes. They're pretty detailed, and Steve and I had a conversation today about the difference between notes and minutes. And some of the minutes that are before us today, we've got May 16th and June 13th of 2023. These were pretty lengthy, and my suggestion is that for purposes of minutes, we need only hit the highlights of what was discussed. People were on a particular side or made a particular motion, and certainly what any votes would be. But I think it's unnecessary for Steve to try to take down verbatim everything that's been said. And I think the most accurate way to do that is the recording that we already have. So I would ask Steve to try to synopsize more, and instead of trying to capture some of the words, because my concern is some of the words I don't understand. And I'm referring to, if we look at May 16th first, we have the agenda, which is 2 pages. Then on items 1 and 2, which is Guile Road, at the top of the second page, on the second paragraph, it says JK, which is me. And it says plastics continue to produce PFAS. I don't know what that means. I mean, I'm certainly not testifying as an expert. And then it says KB, who was one of the, I'll tell you who KB is in a minute, I think. Oh, Kyla Bennett. So she was an expert for the neighborhood the neighborhood group that was opposed to this. I don't know if she said this, but it says, as they weather UV, acid rain, sunlight, more PFAS come off over time, tested over a decade old. Precursors stay in soil, continue to form legacy PFAS.
Right,
over
this was
time.
all about the degradation.
I know it is, but I don't know what the notes mean.
I agree with
I
you.
know
I
the
had a
topics
really
were
tough
different.
time reading and deciphering and following, and I got through about half of it, and I couldn't go any further, I must admit.
Yeah, I don't know if, and particularly because the meeting minutes, once they're voted on, will become part of the appellate record, and this has been appealed. So I
Right.
think we may try to reconnoiter and try it again, and just try to reduce this. And these will be preserved as a public record, the notes. But
Right,
I
so
go to-
is this a transcription of the recorded?
It is not.
No,
Oh, it is.
not.
Okay.
Ingrid, these were just my contemporaneous notes as it was
Wow.
going on.
Well, wow, thank you, Steve. This is a lot of work. And there were a lot of things going on. Yeah, it's pretty dense. Yeah, so this remains as a public, on the public record, John, is what you're saying, right? If we're gonna distill
Not-
it, we need to make sure that,
We need to
We have
distill
both.
it so that it becomes part of our minutes. That's a technical category of document. They will
Right,
become part
right.
if this would be accessible because it's a document that's part of our file. So it's technically a
Exactly.
public document, but it's not the same thing as a minute. And I'm concerned
Yeah.
because like on the next page in the third paragraph, it says JK noted that he picked up information from Arlington, Mass, and will scan and send around. He spoke with Laura Green in Arlington, Susan Chapnick, information. I did not speak to Laura Green. I know Laura Green. I've actually used her as an expert in a mercury case that I had, mercury in fish. I did not speak to her about that. I did read her article that she submitted to the Arlington Conservation Commission, and I did read Susan Chapnick's information report that she submitted to the Arlington Board. She, I believe, is the chairman of the Arlington Conservation Commission. I read both of their reports. I did not speak to either one of them. And I'm just concerned that if this were to go out in this fashion, that's just not accurate.
So John, I need to know what is more accurate, okay? So can you make can you redline it for me?
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
I'd end up redlining almost all of it because I don't think
Okay,
minutes are designed to reflect the words that were used, the positions taken, like Paul Makashima spoke on behalf of the neighborhood
right.
association or group in opposition to the field. Perfect. And he addressed, excess heat,
Many
PFAS
things, many
contamination.
details. Yes,
and-
yes.
Yeah, but not.
I was trained as a research scientist, and that's the difference. Scientists have a different priority for the words than do lawyers, obviously.
But some of these words don't form a sentence. I don't know what
Okay,
they mean.
okay.
And the topics, there's no problem with bringing in the topics.
Okay,
the
so
subject
I need
matter or
to
positions taken.
rewrite. Basically, I need to rewrite them. That's all.
Maybe I can help Mr. Chairman a little bit on
Yes.
this. The minutes have to be able to stand on their own over time,
Right.
and they have to be understandable by the general public. So what I would suggest we might do is help Steve by suggesting he might look at the minutes of some other Milton committees and boards, maybe starting with the select board, which is probably the set of minutes that are under the most scrutiny from public and legal perspectives. And if there are any questions about guidelines, et cetera, that they may be, that may be a question to bring to the town clerk's office.
I agree 100%.
Fair enough. Thank you, Arthur.
You're welcome. Hope that helps. And if I can help you on this, let me know.
Sure.
And it will save a lot of time on your part. I mean, this must have taken hours and hours. to put
Yes.
this on. All right. Well, I salute you for doing that. And your attention to detail is admirable. But to the extent that some of it is confusing, I fear that you would confuse the appellate record rather than clarify it.
Understood.
And I'll
Thank you.
work with you, Steve, on getting this done.
Sure.
And I know it's a task. I don't think that we're in a position to vote up or down on this because I think it needs enough editing, but others may feel differently. I don't know if others had a chance to read these.
I did, and to me, they seemed less like minutes than notes. And I guess it didn't really bother me that sometimes there weren't complete sentences, because I felt like when votes were reported, I could get the facts there. So all I'm saying is I accepted them as notes, and they seemed adequate as notes and minutes.
And they're not even called minutes. If you'll see every top of every page, it says notes, doesn't say minutes.
Yeah, minutes would be extracted from this.
From notes.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Any other
Yeah.
thoughts, Wendy? I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
Well, I see what you're saying, John, that it's hard to kind of extract an unambiguous sense from everything that's there. but on the other hand, that doesn't seem to be necessary to me. Yeah, I think they could be rewritten to be more clear. I think they sort of have value as they are, and it might be, considering how much work is already going into them, I don't know if they're worth a lot of extra work.
Well, my concern is that we're duty bound to keep minutes.
Yeah, I see that, and I agree completely that we should keep a record of what the agenda matters were and whether we took any action on them.
Yes.
And also what needs to be in minutes is everybody's name who attended. If I were doing them, wouldn't do any more than that just to save myself the trouble.
All right, well, I'll work with Steve on this, and perhaps we can get, would it be Lynn DiNapoli, Arthur, that would be?
Yeah,
the
she would be able to provide good examples of the select board minutes.
All right, that's good. All right, so Steve, I'll work with you tomorrow on that. So why don't we table these until they're revised into a different format?
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Steve. And that brings us to Kelly, you're back.
Yes. So I had a discussion with Charles, and I think just in the interest of clarity, if I can share my screen again.
Yes.
So what you're looking at is your condition 43. The very bottom of it with the red line is where it said the 3-year extension is also, and then it goes to contingent. The first line that I added at the bottom is the 5-year order is also, and that's the language that you voted.
Yes.
I would then say that the language that we think is comfortable, if you're okay with it, is this sentence here where my cursor is: the hydro rake machine should not be stored overnight in the pond, and any refueling would be done away from the pond, comma. So after the comma, it would read in an area outside the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission, and then you would strike the words at the site of the equipment storage facility currently utilized by the golf club.
Language after the comma, in an area outside the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. And I think that's
I think that's what it
that's
says in
what I
our
wrote.
regs, John.
Yeah, that's what I said. Out of the pond and outside of the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission.
I think that's what we've been talking about, but sometimes it's just easier to have it so we can all look at it, the words at the same time, and decide if they're right or not.
Yes.
And I'll just change it if you feel the need, but.
Now, see, that language is acceptable to me, but Hans, I think you wanted to state it differently.
No, I'm fine with that, provided that, that's what occurs. At the end of the day, that's the intent. And the only reason I suggested something otherwise is if it was infeasible, or if the applicant found it was infeasible to store overnight outside of the jurisdiction. So, but I'm fine with the language as it's currently offered up.
All right. Anybody else? Thoughts, comments? I can't see everybody, so I don't know if anybody's hand is raised. There is. Any other comments? All right, so then I would entertain a motion. So we're back for the public's benefit. We're back on. Trying to get the number here. This is number 4, order conditions on the pond at Wollaston Golf Course. And we're referring to a proposed or a potential proposal to change special condition number 43 so that the essentially, the language that was just written is accurate, I believe. And it would be the hydro rake would, for overnight purposes, would be out of the pond and outside of the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. And the exact language was just what was proposed by Kelly. Is there a motion to make this as a minor revision to the existing order of conditions?
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second? Hans?
I'll second it.
Rod, second. Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion. Remember, we get 2 votes. First one is this a minor revision? Arthur Doyle, what say you?
Yes, on a minor revision.
Tom Palmer?
Aye.
Hans?
Yes.
Wendy?
Yes.
Ingrid?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And I, John Kiernan, say yes as well. The second motion is whether or not that revision should be made to the existing article or provision number 43. Is there such a motion? Hans, it goes back to you.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Yes.
Todd?
Yep.
Seconded. Any discussion? Arthur Doyle, how do you vote?
Yes.
Tom Palmer? Hans?
Aye.
Yes.
Hans, okay. Wendy?
Yes, John.
Ingrid?
Yes.
Todd?
Yes.
And I, John Cannon, vote yes. Okay, so that amendment has been made to the existing order of conditions. So thank you very much. I think we're done.
Good.
All right. All right, Kelly?
Yes, thank you. I
All
don't
right.
think we're happy, but I think we're done.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your courtesy and your patience, and Charles, I thank you as well. All right, so on the agenda now, we are up to
Everybody.
we've gone over 7, which was the approval of the Conservation Commission minutes. We're going to defer that to the February meeting. Is there any other additional business? Steve, anything?
Well, I think you and I spoke earlier about number 24 Wentworth Farms Lane Road.
Yes. And that was, and for the benefit of the commission members and the public, we did receive information that there was a problem with compliance with an order of conditions that we issued at lot number 6. And I don't want to
Yes.
mess this up, but I believe it's number 24 Wentworth Farms,
Yes.
correct? 6 is 24. Because when the development is made, it's a lot number first, and then it's assigned an address number. And the issue is whether or not the septic system had been constructed in compliance with the order of conditions. And the information we received from an engineer was that it had not been. The difficulty posed is this, that very often homeowners do not come to us for a number of years seeking a certificate of compliance. And the only thing that motivates some homeowners to come to us and ask for the certificate is when they try to refinance or if they sell the property, because the order of conditions is still in the registry of deeds. And if they want to sell it or refinance, the banks and the buyers require that there be a certificate of compliance. In this case, that didn't happen, but we did receive credible information that there was a non-compliance. It does create some kind of a risk, or it could create some kind of a risk that the septic system, the leaching field, would blow out. The order conditions required a retaining wall, a concrete structure, and there is no concrete structure. Rather, there was a pile of stones. And the difficulty or the risk of that kind of construction is it could blow out during a heavy rainfall. So what I did is I called the Board of Health, and I talked to Caroline Kinsella. They said, "Did you issue an approval of the septic system?" And she said they had not done so yet, but they would certainly look at it. I did talk to the engineer because, I'm sorry, not the engineer, the building inspector, because my information was that there was a temporary certificate of occupancy. And to be honest with you, I didn't know there was such a thing as a temporary certificate of occupancy, but I guess it is. And Caroline Kinsella didn't know there was such a thing either, but apparently there is. And that will come up for review, I think, probably in March.
Yes.
The temporary certificate doesn't last forever. So between now and then, and Steve has visited the site, has talked to the homeowner. We need to bring them in, and probably the way to do that would be what I call the soft enforcement order. You remember we changed our regulations, so we could issue an enforcement order that's by letter, that's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be recorded in the Registry of Deeds, and invite them to come in and say, did you comply? Why didn't you comply? How are you going to fix it? Because right now we're relatively close to the wetlands. It is a jurisdictional lot. We did issue the order of conditions, and we have credible information that the order was not complied with. So my suggestion is we issue the letter, soft order of enforcement order, and invite them to our February meeting. And I think this is, the name is it Dr. Joshua Storm?
Jordan Strom.
Jordan Strom.
Yes.
And he's at 24 Wentworth Farm Road.
Yes, there's a second issue on the site. There's a catch basin in the driveway in front of the house, which is not on the plan either. We don't know where that catch basin drains to either. So there are two conditions. There's a boulder wall instead of a constructed concrete wall, and there's a catch basin that we don't know where it flows to or discharges to. Two items.
Or is it a perforated basin?
Don't know.
Yeah,
Don't know.
we'd have to camera it. Or
Right.
see what documentation exists.
Exactly.
It may flow nowhere.
Right.
Is the catch basin on the property or is it on the roadway?
It's on the property in the middle of the driveway adjacent to the home. The driveway goes down a slope right to the front door, and it's pretty much right in front of the door, a few feet away from a walkway.
I have a neighbor with two of those in his driveway, so.
Sure. Yeah, they're a common item. It's just not on the plan.
And we certainly want to know where it's going, where the water is
Right.
going.
Right.
All right. You've seen the site, so will you work with Philip to just
Yes.
craft the letter to invite them to come in and explain the non-compliance and their plan to fix it?
Yes.
All right. Anything else for additional business?
I have nothing.
All right, then. Anybody, Arthur? Anything? Nobody?
I mean,
Darren, unless you want to update members on the CPC funding recommendations.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess we have between us about 3 or 4 of them, and CPC did recommend ultimately a full funding of the surveying and delineation for the salt marsh off Granite Avenue. We've got a lot of work to do down there, and now, of course, these approvals will be dependent upon approval by the town meeting and its annual meeting in May.
And that's a $75,000 item.
That is correct.
All right. And then there were 2 other proposals, one for the trail extension from the anticipated pedestrian bridge to the currently existing pathway. And that was originally accepted by the CPC for consideration with a request that we use our sharp pencils and cut down the cost from 40,000. So I worked with Chase Berkeley, and we got the budget from 40,000 down to 5,000, which they were very happy to see. I think that will be sufficient to create that pathway, and we're going to work in conjunction with the Beverly Park folks who are actually designing a pathway from Sumner Street towards the pond, which will connect with the pathway that we're already doing. So working through the DPW and the Beverly Park Playground Group and the CPC, we'll be able to make that pathway consistent all the way around. The second Conservation Commission application to CPC was to do a feasibility study, also for $40,000, to make the entire pathway circumnavigating the pond itself, or circumambulating the pond, the pond, to make it handicapped accessible, capable of sustaining a wheelchair to provide increased access to the disabled. So that was enthusiastically received. So we received the full $40,000 for that study. The reason it's going to take a study because there are two big issues in the pond. One on the east side, closest to Blue Hills Parkway. There are a lot of tree roots there and a lot of trees. We're trying to figure out how do we not cut the tree roots? How much can we raise the elevation to get a wheelchair accessible ramp over the top of some of those roots without killing the trees and still make it sustainable and ADA compliant. On the west side, closer to Sumner Street, we've got huge drainage problems here. There are very large, muddy sections, so we're going to have to do some pretty serious drainage calculations there to see how we can redirect some of that water. So that $40,000 will be well spent, and we're currently looking for the appropriate planner for that purpose. So that's where we are on that. We've got money, and again, as Arthur said, this is all subject to approval by the annual town meeting, which we expect in what, May?
Correct.
Okay. In
the meantime, we should give a nod of appreciation to Wendy, who's our representative on the CPC.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. I just wanted to add too that the members of the Community Preservation Committee were had nothing but great things to say about all three of the proposals, and some of the other feedback was that they were very pleased to see that we have been in discussions with the neighborhood for the Beverly Park playground, and we're working hard on finalizing our the proposal to town meeting to make it official.
That's great, Wendy. Keep doing the good work. You're doing God's work.
It's a pleasure to serve on this committee. It really is.
That's great. Thanks. Now, Bill Gallagher, do you have anything for us for additional business?
Yes, I am. Yeah, thank you very much. This is a very interesting topic. I enjoyed it. Number one, as I said before, I'm involved in underwater archaeology with Dave Robinson, and down at Milton Landing, I think everyone knows where that flagpole is. And off to the left, the steps there, and somewhat in between those two landmarks, there is indication of ribs of a shipwreck, or maybe a small boat. And Dave Robinson, the director, came down and he did some measurements and calculations, and he came up with this probably about a 30-foot vessel that sank there. The wood is white oak, which is very popular as far as using in wooden boat construction. So there's no indication of a certain year that this boat was built. The other important aspect that he emphasized was to somewhat keep this information, let me say, confidential. He came up with an example up in the North Shore where in the fluctuation of the tide eroded away and shown some ribs of a ship. It was posted on social media, and within a few days, were 100 people down there. It is considered property of the state of Massachusetts, and all the rights, therefore, under that. So it's not meant to be tampered with in any way. That was the number one disclosure that I want to make. The second was about the oyster larvae and shells. I'll be meeting this Thursday with a scientist, and she's going to provide me with a paper explaining the scientific process of the larvae the larvae. I'm running out of saliva in my mouth here. About the larvae, the oyster larvae and the connection to the oyster shell. And I'll be presenting that to the commission here.
Oh, that's good news.
That's about all. I have talked to several people in the state. They have given me directions on proceeding with this. And one of the most, let me say, shocking things was that the collection of shells would be permitted, but they would have to be stored outside for a year. I suggested boil them as a process to remove any bacterial contamination, and there was no reply from their end. So I'm working on this, and it's very enjoyable and interesting. So that's about all I wanted to say, and thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you for your, not just your time, but your great efforts.
You're welcome.
That's admirable. We salute you.
Thank you.
I had a quick question for Mr. Gallagher. In terms of the remnants of the ship, and I know that sounds like you're working with the MBUAR. Is there a federal connection there? Is there so for terrestrial pieces, there's eligibility for listing under Section 106? Is there a similar?
Well, this is documentation under the state. So it's just documentation, period. I have talked with Ben Hassel, he's with NOAA. There is a shipwreck out there, and that is off of Provincetown, and that is under federal jurisdiction. So there's the distinction between the two, but on both situations, you're not allowed to take any artifacts or items from the shipwreck itself. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
That's good. Thanks all. Are we done? Are we ready for a motion to adjourn, or am I missing anything? I don't think so. All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yeah, we almost didn't have a motion. All right, I'll second that one. All right, all in favor, I say aye.
Aye.
Thanks. We are adjourned. Thank you all, and Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Bill. Good night.
Take care. Talk to you soon.